What's up, everybody? Welcome back to ScarletSprites Quarantine Hair Edition. How you feeling about John Riggs' list of underrated Neo Geo titles? You see what I did there? I love seeing Neo vids come out from other people that I follow and watch, and so I was obviously very curious to see what John would call out on his list. Now, the word underrated can always draw some attention and debate, so definitely a good one to use for a YouTube video. Similar to what John said, this isn't about the Windjammers, Metal Slugs, or Samurai Shodowns that I'm sure you're already aware of. Think of this as either your underrated or simply overlooked games for SNK's arcade hardware. Now, I know that some of these titles aren't necessarily held in high regard, but I do think that they are worth your time to at least try out because everything here is something that I personally enjoy playing. So with that said, let's go ahead and see if we can add to John's list. First up may be a shocker, but I always recommend League Bowling. It's just simple, stupid fun. When someone asks me what games they should get to put in their Neo Geo arcade cabinet, and they're running through the list of King of Fighters titles, the Metal Slugs, I'm always like, whoa, I'm going to give you the best tip you could possibly receive for your cab. Make League Bowling one of your games. The game is easy to pick up for beginners, which will attract the casuals, but also features some more intermediate elements like selecting ball weight and then the ability to add hook or draw onto the ball for splits and whatnot. Even better, the in-game animations are fun, you have 3 different styles of games to choose from, and the game works with up to 4 players. This game is also available as an unlockable on the Neo Geo Arcade Stick Pro. Next, I'm going to toss out Cyberlip, and let's get this game's largest hang-up out of the way first. You can't shoot diagonally. It's weird, I don't understand it. The game is instantly better if that option were granted, but it is what it is. As you can see, Cyberlip is a run-and-gun style game with a futuristic cyberpunk feel to it. Now that alone garners my interest, but also the fact that it's a non-Metal Slug run-and-gun. Being an early release on the system, it has some shortcomings, but I still think this is a fun playthrough, especially in co-op mode with a friend. I won't spoil it, but the game has a twist ending to it that really stands out, especially on a humble and often less discussed title like this. Next, I'm going to call out Neo Driftout. Yes, believe it or not, people, there are some racing games on the Neo Geo. I'm not going to lie to you, one of the highlights for me in this one is the ability to pick the Toyota Celica as your car. I have a whole lot of love for that car since it was the first one I bought when I got out of college. And as far as the game goes, if you've ever played RC Pro-Am, then you know exactly how this game controls. You're not racing against other cars so much per se, although you will see them out on the track. They're mostly there just as obstacles for you to get around. But the real driving point of the game, pun intended, is to beat the clock that's ticking at the top. As you may have guessed, there are checkpoints throughout the courses as well that can extend your time. Most of you know that I'm not a huge Neo fighting game fan, but what I like, and I certainly like Rage of the Dragons. This was developed as a sequel to the Neo's Double Dragon game, but licensing couldn't be fully secured, and so it was released with some very minor modifications. I mean, come on, the leads in this are Jimmy and Billy Lewis. Jimmy and Billy Lewis. We even have a Bubo. Alright, you guys get the idea here. The game is a tag fighter and features gorgeous graphics and sound. I like this one so much I even put its poster up. Definitely give it a shot unless you're like Todd from Todd's Nerd Cave, who hates this game and, well, fun in general. I don't know why that sticks out, but I haven't forgotten him saying that, and I plan to bring it up every chance I get. Here's a nice vertical shooter for you on the Neo, Strikers 1945 Plus by Psycho. This may be the closest thing we have on the original Neo Geo library to a bullet hell style game. The other thing I really like about this game, aside from its visuals, is that you'll notice the game is cropped on the left and right sides by your statuses and such to give the actual gameplay field a true vertical look to it. Remember, in the arcade, you couldn't just rotate a Neo Geo monitor for a vertical layout because you'd likely be running this cartridge alongside 3 or 5 other titles, so these guys got creative and cropped things. Overall, this is a pretty fun shooter, but it can feel a bit repetitive and short at times. I do find myself coming back to it a lot for some button mashing though, and I'd still recommend checking it out. Don't overlook this one. Let's sneak another sports title into this mix. Street Slam is a cartridge that has seen a lot of play in my MVS cabinet. This is another one similar to League Bowling, where if you have it running and a casual person sees it, they'll likely ask if it's NBA Jam and be curious about playing it. And your response to that question will of course be, no, this is the poor man's NBA Jam, but it is still fun to play head-to-head matches on. This is 3-on-3 basketball that has some very modest controls, basically a pass and shoot button for offense that then block and throw elbows on defense. Instead of catching on fire, you build a power meter as you make shots and dunks, and when that meter is filled, you are guaranteed to make your next shot, so make sure that that's a 3. We talked a little about run and gun, and we've seen a vertical shooter, so let's take a mashup of those two genres and try Ninja Commando. I think it's pretty evident what this is. It's a full-on button masher for those evenings when you don't want to think about anything. And again, this is probably similar in vibe to any other co-op game from back in the day that you just quarter-fed and laughed with a friend over as you jammed away. This at least gives you the option to choose your character at the beginning, and the level designs switch up enough to give you different scenery, even if the gameplay is pretty much the same from one sequence to the next. So while this game isn't winning any awards for being innovative or unique, I guarantee you will have fun blasting your way from south to north with a buddy. Next up is Riding Hero. Just kidding, that's a total piece of shit, don't ever play that game. Instead, play this, Prehistoric Isle 2. Now this one falls into the classic debate of whether or not you like or can tolerate pre-rendered graphics. Now, I personally don't care. I think this looks pretty decent overall, and come on, this is a horizontal shooter that has you blasting dinosaurs. You can choose between one of 2 helicopters to start the game. Each has its own subtle differences, and as is the case with any shooter, you'll be treated to a variety of power-ups throughout level play. Now, some may even feel like those power-ups are too abundant, and that might be a good opportunity to mention that although this has the same publisher as Pulsar and Blazing Star, it isn't as good as either of those games. But it doesn't have to be. You can tell from the theme alone that this is attempting to be something different. Kind of like a campy MST3K of shooters on the Neo Geo. One of the more unique experiences that this does provide is that at certain points during a stage, things will stop and you'll have to defend the people. A bunch of fleeing humans will try to escape onto a rescue copter, and you'll have to keep them from getting killed by an onslaught of dinos. So like a lot of games here, I'm not touting this as something on the level of Dodonpachi or R-Type. It's just a game with a fun theme that I think a lot of people will enjoy blasting their way through, even if the game is a little on the easy side. Here's another game that many Neo fans adore, but that can sometimes get overlooked by newcomers to the console, Robo Army. This again is one of the earlier games on the system, but I feel like it does a great job of really capturing the feel of an early 90s arcade game, because that's exactly what it is. It's a side-scrolling beat-em-up that features a variety of robotic enemies, mini-bosses, and end bosses. In particular, I've always appreciated the large sprite and artwork in this title, as well as the imagination behind the designs. The music isn't half bad in this one either. I think my favorite feature though has to be the ability to turn into an armored vehicle and just run enemies over. There are also a lot of items that can be picked up and used as weapons. Don't miss out on this one, guys. Finally, I'll mention a game that is always overlooked, Baseball Stars Professional. It's easy to understand why this one gets forgotten. Baseball Stars 2 is pretty much the go-to definitive baseball game on the Neo. And I'll admit, the nostalgia bug is heavy with this one because it's a launch title for the Neo Geo, and I can recall playing this on an MVS unit back in the day. The visuals are far less animated and aggressive compared to its sibling sequel, but I actually kind of like that about it some days. I think the best way to describe this would be to compare attending a major league game at a huge ballpark versus the charm and subtlety of sitting outside in a small stadium for a minor league game. You're watching baseball in both scenarios, well, in this case playing it, but both are delivering different types of experiences, and I hope that kind of makes sense to you guys. Regardless though, this is a part of SNK and Neo Geo history and showcases the early promise the system had when it first debuted. I'd encourage you to give it a chance even if you eventually return to Baseball Stars 2 as your go-to, but it's important to know your roots, people. And that's it for my list of top 10 overlooked games on the Neo Geo. I know there are probably a few others, but I really tried to keep the list to just 10. Other notables I was thinking of were Sengoku 2, which I personally think is better than the third installment, and also Top Hunter. I really debated on whether or not Top Hunter was underrated or overlooked, and I think it could easily have made the list, but like I said, I was trying to keep this to just 10. I know a lot of you Neo fans will have input on this list, and I definitely welcome that. Please leave your own thoughts and additions in the comments below. Check out John's video if you haven't seen it already. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will catch you all next time, maybe with a haircut. Later, guys.